Yo, day 37, Deadlift Daily. So I'm almost done with this next macro cycle. I got 2 sessions left here, and then I've got a technical day. Let me see here. I'm looking through my logs. Yeah, so today I've got a pretty hefty training session. I got 35 lifts. Now, I've been feeling kind of sore lately, specifically like in my hips and my groin, a little bit in the lower back, like lower like extensor area. And so something I've been doing is adding in some focused crawls. You see me here kind of balancing the ball on my lower back. And so one of the things, not one of the things, let me see here. How do I want to say this? I guess an imbalance that you can create when doing sumo is, you're constantly in this abducted hip position, right? Your knees are further away from the center of your midline, right? So what does this do? Well, this really builds the hips, right? This really builds the groin, right? And but you're not getting a whole lot of that adduction, right? You're not getting those knees closer together, which is where you would traditionally get like let's say conventional. Conventional, your knees would be closer together, right? And so something I've been doing like at the end of my training sessions and even just as a mix in between deadlifts is doing some baby crawl or 6-pointed crawl as we would call in the GFM system, and even some 4-point crawl here. And so what I like about this is this works the hip flexors, right? Because you got to actively pull. And it helps me work on some of that adduction, helps me keep my knees closer together. And this thing is giving me fits here. So like the intention behind this ball, you can use a foam roll. I have this little soft, like squishy type ball that we use with some of our FMS correctives. Is, we want those hips to move independently of each other, and we don't want our hips like flopping from side to side. So this ball here gives me that immediate feedback if my hips are just kind of flopping around, right? Which can be a weakness in the hip. And so it's giving me the direct feedback, and then from there I'll line up for some goblet squats, and I'm not really squatting per se. I'm just kind of resting in that position and doing some curls and just getting a good stretch in the hip. And so this is a little something I've been adding, like I said, in between my deadlift sets and even at the end of the session, and it's been really paying off. A lot of that groin soreness that I was getting, and I would get on a regular basis pulling sumo, I would notice that midway through a cycle, my groin, specifically on my left side, like deep in my groin, I would start getting some soreness. And after I would pull, let's say at whatever particular weight, and then once I set the barbell down, it would take me a second to like stand up straight. It almost felt like if I stood up too soon that maybe something was going to pop. I don't know. It was just really weird. It wasn't like painful or anything, but it was just one of those like if you've been, let's say you've been like sitting on in the seiza position, right? Which is basically like you've seen martial arts do this. They sit down on their heels, right? So they're kind of sitting in this like heel sit position. And if you've been sitting in that flexed knee position for a period of time, and like almost like your legs kind of fall asleep and like your knee kind of falls asleep, so when you stand up, you got to like ease out of it. Or if you've been in a stretch for a long period of time, right? And you got to like just super like really come out of it really easy. That's kind of that feeling that I would have in the groin. It's like, oh, don't stand up too soon. Like, let's ease up out of that. And I would start feeling that like midway through a training cycle. So here we are 37 days in, and I felt it on and off throughout these last 37 days, but more so these last few days, I've been really feeling that groin. So it's like, you know what? I've been getting a whole lot of hip abduction, right? My knees, further apart from the center of my midline. So I started doing some work, getting my knees, more closer to midline. And so I do that with like some of the crawls. I'll do it from a 6-point crawl, 4-point crawl. And even in my next training cycle, the macro cycle that I'm putting together, I'm going to start incorporating some conventional deadlifts. I'll get into more details of how I'm going to kind of plan that out here as we get into it. But I'm going to be adding in, so this training cycle, I've been doing Zerchers as part of my ramp up and as part of my drop down sets, but I'm going to start incorporating some conventional work at specific intensity zones. So let's say, as an example, you know what? I'll leave the details for when I get into that. But that's kind of what I've been working through. But man, I feel great. Aside from that, like I feel really good. I feel strong. I feel powerful. I'm getting lean, probably the leanest I've been in a while, which is something I want to kind of talk about today. I kind of touched on this in the last episode around like autoregulation, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear. Like, I'm not against autoregulation. Like, it'd be pretty hypocritical because I actually use it in my programming. It's what Kettlebell Workout Snacks is based on. Even like our revamped version of Better Man Blueprint training cycles are based on autoregulation because, it's a great, again, I mentioned it's great for beginners, people that are getting into the game and trying to get that thing going. But once you get going with that, you definitely want to make a progression towards more of a planned training protocols, in my opinion. Okay. And that's what we've noticed that we've had the most success with our students, with my deadlifts, and with me being able to deadlift every single day. So I want to talk about loving your sin. Okay. So we have a lesson in the Better Man Blueprint that's called, uncovering the toxic cycle, the 3 buckets, right? I'm not going to get too much into that because that's something that's exclusive for the guys in that program. But essentially, we all have our own toxic cycle, right? And so I help these guys get to the bottom of that, because what happens is if you don't shed light on that toxic cycle, you don't dig down and figure out, there's a very specific like bucketing concept that we take these guys through to help them get clear on what that toxic cycle is. And at the end of it, essentially, is coming clean with the reason why you're struggling to see progress, whether in weight loss or your family or you're staying consistent to a training program, like whatever that is, it all comes down to this toxic cycle. Okay. And so I just finished 75 hard. Phase 1, right? So it was 30 days. So for 30 straight days, I've got to do all the 5 tasks of 75 hard, right? So I've got to follow a diet, stick to it, no cheat meals, no alcohol, 2 45-minute workouts. One has to be outside regardless of weather conditions, drink a gallon of water every day, read 10 pages from a self-development book, and take a daily progress picture. Okay. So I just wrapped up 30 days, 30 days of that. And man, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great. Like, I'm just super productive. I'm very efficient with my time. And things are just great. It's great. Now, here's the kicker. I can't do phase 2 for another 30 days. So he makes you wait 30 days before doing phase 2, which is basically phase 2. All phase 2 is the regular actually phase 1. It's those 5 critical tasks, plus you got to do 3 additional critical tasks. Okay, so it's going to be 8 total tasks you got to do. So for me, and these tasks have to be things that you don't normally do, but these are critical things that move your life forward. Okay, so for me, these critical tasks are, I get up, and when I do my daily walks, I pray my rosary every single morning. And if I don't pray my rosary for the day, I got to start over on day 1. And so that's the whole concept of this 75 hard, is if you miss any one of these tasks, if you drink 127 ounces of water versus 128, you got to start over on day 1. If you do 43 and a half minutes of your workout, you got to start over on day 1, right? And while many people may think, well, damn, man, that's all based, I don't want to think of things as a failure. Well, here's the thing. Life is based on failure, right? Like, the more you fail at things, like the most successful people in the world have failed at things over and over and over. Look at baseball. $100 million contract is based off of 70% failure. If you're successful in baseball, 30% of the time, that's a $100 million contract, right? And so life is based on failures because, ultimately, hopefully, you learn from those failures and move forward, right? And so that's what I like about the framework. So I pray my rosary every single day. Then you got to do, then my second one is I do my daily readings. There's some of the readings that I share with you from time to time. I do these daily readings from scripture, and then I write commentary on these readings of what it means for me, how I can apply it to my life, how I can use it to help me to become a better man, husband, and father. Okay. And then one of my third critical tasks is I've got to get something accomplished for work, right? So for me, it's publishing these videos, writing my next emails. It's got to be some kind of publication, some kind of content creation. And I've got it mapped out of what it is I'm going to create. And if I miss any of those, I got to start over on day one. So I've been super productive. And then you got to do a 5-minute cold shower, 10 minutes of focused visualization, right? So those are the things you got to do for phase one. And I just came off of that. I finished on a Wednesday, and I kept it going. I finished Wednesday. I did it Thursday. I did it Friday, and then this past weekend, Saturday and Sunday, I took the weekend off. I enjoyed some time with the family. I had pretty much like a cheat weekend, if you will. We had a family movie night, and I had what did I have? I had some pizza, and I had a half a pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream, and some Girl Scout cookies. It is Girl Scout cookie season, and I freaking tore it up. And then Sunday, we went to Mass, and then after that, I picked up some donuts from Shipley's, crazy good donuts, and Whataburger. So that was like my weekend, right? And man, I tell you what, I felt like crap. And it's a crazy thing, man, how your mind works. Like I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna have any cheat, because I hadn't had I hadn't had any cheat meals, no nothing. It was 100% clean for like 33 days. And I've dropped quite a bit of body fat percentage. I'm super lean right now. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm not gonna have any cheat meals or anything until I can see my abs, which I can already start seeing a couple of them. They're starting to pop through just a little bit. I was like, I'm not gonna cheat or anything until I do that. But it was weird, and the reason why I share that, because it goes back to this 30 days of waiting until phase 2. So Andy's like, look, you can't start phase 2 for 30 days. So the whole thing is here, the whole concept here, and the rationale behind that is, can you stay on point without being on a program? Right? So you're not always going to be able to track calories. You're not always going to be able to, be on a specific program from time to time. And this is where things like auto-regulation can come in from time to time, right? In between a planned training protocol, auto-regulation comes in handy, because then you can work on specific skill sets. You can dial in your skills. You can work on specific things, right? So you're not always going to be able to be on a program. And the goal here is, can you maintain the discipline that you've cultivated the last 30 days without being on a program? And I was like, yeah, sure I can. But I tell you what, I got 2 days into that, and I was already thinking about a cheat meal because I hadn't had anything, and I'd already had it in my mind that, when I come off of this, I'm not going to go crazy, but I am going to enjoy something over the weekend. But then I was like, no, you know what? I'm not going to do that. Anyway, that thought stayed in my mind long enough to where I was like, I knew it. Like I just knew I was going to break that and succumb to that. And that's where, we love our sin kind of thing that I want to talk about today, is that where that comes in. It's just crazy. Like, so my weakness is sugar. I don't have to have salty things or fast food or whatever. Like, I'll eat it, right? But like cookies, ice cream, that kind of stuff, like that's my weakness, And I want to share a reading with you from the other day that made me that brought this to mind. And then it was just perfect timing because of what came up this weekend after me finishing 75 hard. So this comes from Mark's Gospel, and I just want to read this to you. And then I'm going to break down a little bit of like what it meant to me and how it ties into loving our sin. Okay, so this is from the reading from the 31st of January. So he says, Jesus and his disciples came to the other side of the sea, to the territory of the Gerasenes. He got out of the boat. At once a man from the tombs who had an unclean spirit met him. The man had been dwelling among the tombs, and no one could restrain him any longer, even with a chain. In fact, he had frequently been bound with shackles and chains, but the chains had been pulled apart by him, and the shackles smashed, and no one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the hillsides, he was always crying out and bruising himself with stones. Catching sight of Jesus from a distance, he ran up and prostrated himself before him, crying out loud in a voice, quote, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me," end quote. And so what was happening here was Jesus had been saying to him, the unclean spirits, like, to come out of this man. So this dude was possessed. He's like crazy strong, supernatural strength. No one can control this guy. And Jesus had been calling him to come out. And so he's just like, please don't torment me. Like, this is not the guy speaking. These are the demons and the evil spirits that are within him, right? And so Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" And he replied, "Legion is my name, and there are many of us." And he pleaded earnestly with him not to drive them away from that territory. Now a large herd of swine was feeding there on the hillside, and they pleaded with him, "Send us into the swine, let us enter them." And he let them, and the unclean spirits came out and entered the swine. The herd of about 2,000 rushed down a steep bank into the sea, where they were drowned. The swineherds ran away and reported the incident in the town and throughout the countryside. And people came out to see what had happened. As they approached Jesus, they caught sight of the man whom had been possessed by Legion, sitting there clothed and in his right mind. And they were seized with fear. Those who witnessed the incident explained to them what had happened to the possessed man and to the swine. Then they began to beg him to leave their district. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed pleaded to remain with him. But Jesus would not permit him, but told him instead, "Go home to your family and announce to them all that the Lord in his pity has done for you." Then the man went off and began to proclaim in the Decapolis what Jesus had done for him, and all were amazed. So there's a few things there that stand out to me. That, again, these are questions I'm asking myself. Like, why were these people seized with fear? Like, was it because, like, what were they afraid of? Right? Was it the simple fact that they witnessed a quote unquote man do something supernatural? Right? Like Jesus, removing these unclean spirits. Because remember, there was a couple of readings before that I shared with you where they thought, like, the Pharisees were like, "Oh, you must be like son of the devil, essentially, because you're removing these spirits," right? So were they afraid that, like, who is this Jesus person, right? But here's what I think, like, or was it because they were up to no good and they wanted to remain unclean themselves? They wanted to remain in their sin because they told them, like, leave here, right? Because the truth is ultimately we love our sin, right? And this was something I mentioned the other day in the whole, like, when they told, I think they told David, or it was Jesus, they told him, the blind and the lame will, I think it was David, the blind and the lame will drive you away, right? So to me, the blind is the people that refuse to see the truth. The people that continue to lie to themselves of why they aren't seeing results, why their life is the way it is, why they can't lose the weight, why they can't stay consistent with something. That we continue to lie to ourselves, like, well, I'm kind of following this thing, but I'm not seeing the weight loss, or I'm not reaping the results from this training program. So we don't want to be faced with that truth. The truth is actually that we love our sin. Like, you just have to admit it to yourself, right? And the lame, those are the people that are, broken, wounded, spiritually, physically, emotionally. These are the people, again, that don't want to see the truth. They want to stay stuck where they're at, okay? And maybe these people wanted to drive Jesus out because they didn't want to change their life, ultimately. And that's one of the big reasons I think people leave the church, specifically the Catholic Church. And I'm not talking about because of the people in it. Like, there's a lot of that going on, right? But I think a lot of the times people leave the church because her message requires them to change their life. And so Jesus was forced out of towns because he was bringing the truth, right? You've heard Jesus talk about a prophet is not welcome in his own town, right? So why did they force Jesus out? Was it because I think it was because they didn't want to be convicted of their sins, of their wretchedness, of their demons that they're dealing with internally, and we're all guilty of this. In the book Iron John, there's something that I caught there that was pretty interesting. Was in Iron John, the young boy in the story, to let Iron John out of the cage to get his golden ball back, he has to steal the key from his mother's pillow. And I think there was something interesting there, that there is a hint of pleasure in theft in that. Like, in my opinion, I think men like to steal. I know I did. When I was a kid, I used to love to steal things. I didn't grow up with much as a kid. We had our bare essentials, but I didn't have much, right? Many of the kids in our neighborhood, they had like all the cool G.I. Joe toys and Transformers and things like that. And I would go around and I would steal these things so I could play with them. And we had a little clubhouse in our backyard that my stepfather built. And I used to take these little toys and I would hide them under this orange traffic cone. I would hide them under this orange traffic cone, and then I would play with them. And eventually I got busted, and everybody knew that I stole those things. But St. Augustine mentions something around this too in his book Confessions. St. Augustine talks about a scenario where he's going through this pear orchard, and he goes through this pear orchard and just decides he's going to steal these pears. Right? And after he steals these pears and he goes home, he's like, man, why did I do that? Like, why did I steal these pears? Like, I didn't need them. I actually have better pears here at home. Like, why did I do that? And as he continued to contemplate on this, he got really honest with himself. And he says, you know what? I stole those pears out of the sheer enjoyment of stealing them. Like, I just stole them because I wanted to steal them. And so I'm seeing these patterns, right? The boy stealing the key in Iron John, and St. Augustine talking about he stole the pears out of the sheer enjoyment of mischief. And then I see in these readings how people were driving Jesus out. Maybe it's because they didn't want to have to change their life, right? They want to just stay stuck in their sin because it's uncomfortable to make changes, right? And so that's something that I thought about this weekend, as I didn't want to have a cheat meal before. I didn't want to have a cheat meal until, again, my goal is until I can see my abs, right? And that's total like vain thing, but that's something that I want. But we have to come clear with that, right? But I had to face myself, like, you know what? I'm just gonna enjoy this pizza and donut. I had pizza and donuts and stuff. Like, I like it. Like, I enjoy that, right? That's my quote unquote sin. Like, and once you admit, just admit that you love your sin. Just admit, once you get clear on that, only then can we move on, and only then can we solve the problem, right? You can't solve the problem if you don't first acknowledge it's a problem. Well, I am following this thing. I don't know why I'm not losing weight, or I don't know why I can't. Just admit to yourself you like stuffing your face with junk food. Just admit to yourself you like drinking alcohol. Admit to yourself that you enjoy watching porn or whatever it is, right? Not judging anybody, but only until you get clear and you acknowledge that, dude, it's going to be really hard to overcome those things. And these are the type of this is the type of coaching we take the men through Better Man Blueprint through, how to uncover this toxic cycle, because we all have our own. So I very specifically help each of these guys discover what that toxic cycle is for them, and then how to overcome that so they can finally be more consistent towards their training efforts, so they can stick to their eating targets, or whatever it is that they're striving for. It's going to be dang near difficult, near impossible to attain those things until you uncover what your toxic cycle is, and then take the right steps to do the bucketing work to get clear on that and to move forward. And that was just something that I was like, I started seeing a pattern popping up like kind of over and over that I wanted to share with you today. So that's the key, man. That's the secret. If you just got to be honest with yourself. You just got to admit, we need to admit as a whole, like, dude, I continue to make these mistakes because I enjoy it. Like, that's it. Just be honest with yourself. That way we can now take the right actions to overcome that. Otherwise, you'll continue to live in a fantastic world, right? In a fantasy. When in reality, it's not the case, right? So, just got to be honest with yourself, man. And that's what I want to share with you today. So, wrapping up, deads. Man, I felt pretty crappy on 385 was a pretty crappy kind of pull. 415, I was able to dial it back in, though. Really shifted my intentions and really focused on that invisible wedge technique that I kind of stumbled upon a few episodes back. 465 was kind of rushed. I felt like I rushed that pull a little bit, felt out of position. 485 was okay. I had a double at that. But I think one of the reasons why I was struggling with that is, man, the setup is tiring. Like, setting up, getting into that wedged position is freaking fatiguing. So that's it, man. I appreciate you watching these videos. Tomorrow we got day 38, and I peak with the highest volume of this entire macro cycle. I was pretty nervous going in. 44 lifts. You heard that. 44 deadlifts in one sitting. That is monster volume in a deadlift session. So that's pretty much it, man. That's all I got. If you missed my last episode, we're kicking off our new deadlift coaching program. It's called Next Level Deadlift. And it's a 16-week coaching program to help you master the skill of deadlifting without training like a powerlifter, so that way you can build a stronger, more capable body. That way, you can play and keep up with your kids. And it's so effective, as I mentioned before. It's based on the exact Plan Strong training system that I learned from Pavel, which is faithfully adapted from the variable overload method, which is what I've been running in the daily deadlift since the first week of my training. And it's something that I have the privilege to teach the Plan Strong system with Fabio Zona and Master SFG. We teach this globally together. And it's unlike anything you've ever tried, man. Unlike auto-regulation, again, auto-regulation is a great tool, but I used auto-regulation in the beginning of this program, and I crashed and burned, completely overtrained. I was sick as a dog for like a whole 24 hours. But what you need is, to finally build that deadlift to take it to the next level, you need the exact planned training protocols, leveraging that Delta 20 principle, so that way you can train as heavy as possible, as often as possible, while staying as fresh as possible. That way you can take that deadlift to the next level. So here's what you need to do next. If you're interested, if you want to know more about the Next Level Deadlift Coaching Program, where you get a chance to work with me and I can help you take that deadlift to the next level. I've got a track record. I've added over 50 kilos to my deadlift in like a 12-month period. That whole from 2013 to 2015, over 50 kilos. Many of our guys have added 20 to 50 kilos to their deadlift within a 12 to 18-month period as well. If you're interested, shoot me an email, hector@strongasheck.com. Subject line, interested in all caps. All right. And the reason why you need to do this right now is I got a pretty full coaching schedule, running a couple of businesses, family, etc. I'm only going to be working with 10 guys in this initial launch. And so got a limited capacity for guys that I can work with. So if you're interested, be sure to shoot me an email, and greatly appreciate you watching these videos, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.